On our planet, there are more than 1.6 billion people who live every day without electricity. They must cook a meager meal over open fires. They have to leave their waste in the street. And many of them live in some of the most crowded places on Earth, unwittingly contributing to the pollution there because they have no real choice. Engineers have long realized there is a critical need to develop a means to bring electrical power to those who must live off the grid. One of the most promising developments in this fight to bring a quality of life to these masses is solar energy. And one of the brightest spots in solar technology development is the design of small and flexible photovoltaic arrays. Small solar arrays can be shaped to fit personal electronic devices like cell phones and laptops. They can even be embedded in fabrics that provide shelter or warmth, making them a viable source of alternative energy for individuals and small groups of users. Small solar's commercial applications are based largely on the work of two men, Nobel laureate Dr. Alan Heeger and Dr. Michael Gratzel, world-renowned scientist at the prestigious Swiss École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne. A visit to these websites will provide some background information on these two industry giants and their work. Doctors Heeger and Gratzel discovered that unlike traditional polycrystalline solar cells, small solar's dye-sensitized thin film cells work on a different principle. These cells consist of a thin film sandwich of two electrodes, with an electrolyte separating the two. A compact layer of dye-sensitized titanium dioxide coats one of the electrodes, in a process very similar to what happens when the chlorophyll absorbs light in a plant during photosynthesis. The dye cell uses a molecule to absorb the solar energy. These nanoscopic particles in the small solar cell are stacked to make a miniature light harvesting machine. The electrons that are excited by the light escape from the dye and into the titanium dioxide, where they pass to the electrode and electrical energy is produced. These small solar cells are extremely efficient. A 2006 report from New Zealand's Massey University put it best. Quote, "As early as 1991, Michael Gratzel reported that controlled formation of highly organized mesoporous titania thin films can achieve photosensitization over a wide band gap. Such a low-cost solar cell can also be highly efficient. A monolayer of charge transfer dye provides the colloidal titanium dioxide films with spectral characteristics, which enable a high proportion of the incident solar energy flux to be harvested. Tests have shown exceptionally high efficiencies for the conversion of incident photons to electrical current, more than 80%. End quote. Today, engineers are capitalizing on Gratzel's discovery. Although still in its infancy, a number of young companies are finding ways to practically apply Professors Heeger and Gratzel's research. For example, Heeger's work found a home at Massachusetts solar innovator Konarka Technologies Incorporated, and the new small solar manufacturing company G24 Innovations in Cardiff, Wales, counts Dr. Gratzel as its mentor. An ocean apart, these two companies are changing the way we think of solar energy generation. Their corporate goals are similar. G24i's Robert Hertzberg explains.
I think anybody who goes in the renewable business has to look at certain things. One, what's your carbon footprint? How much energy does it actually take? What are you reducing? How many terawatts does the Earth now use for power? And are you actually reducing it? Because there's certain kinds of what we call renewable energy, which really don't actually reduce the amount of fossil fuel because it takes so much fossil fuel to actually make it. So what's the net effect? Products that are renewable have to be, whether it's at the inception or ultimately in the disposal, they can't be toxic. The base of this is TiO2. It's toothpaste that you use as the foundation for on top of the substrate here. It's critical. Some of the various products in the market, look, anything that helps renewable is good, but I just think when you're thinking about it in the future, it's all about not being in a position to have toxic materials. Our initial foray is into developing nations where the impact of the renewable energy can be most dramatic on people's lives. They're basically skipping over the infrastructure, like with telephones and other aspects of infrastructure with wireless. they're able to skip over a lot of the infrastructure for power sources. And so we're going to help them do that, right? So, and then the last issue is about affordability. Our product that we're making here in this factory in Cardiff is not a product that's going to go on the roof. The type of material that you see on the roofs today, those big glass panels, last 20 years. Our product lasts 5 years. Our focus is not on the roofs and on building structures, it's on batteries and mobile sources. How many batteries are used in a 5-year period by the military? Billions of them. What about mobile sources for tents, for humanitarian purposes and the like? So much of what happens in the world is mobile source power. So either it takes a lot of power to recharge it, or we use batteries that A, cost a lot of money, and B, have toxic effect when you try to put them into a landfill someplace. If you all of a sudden now have a laptop that you're out there using and you're using solar power, right, you got a 5-year source. So when you analyze it from an economic perspective and you compare it to batteries versus what it costs for power on the grid, it's a whole different thing. And then lastly, if you're going to use this, you wouldn't use it on a roof because its real value is indoors, because you can't get indoor solar, right? Who would think indoor solar? So if you had this in your living room, you could basically recycle the electrons that are coming out of your lights, like we're recycling the electrons right now to create power in this, as these lights go off in this room. So the whole notion is the outdoor solar is limited to those parts where their sun is outdoors. This stuff produces electricity on a full moon. What can you do with this? There's hundreds and hundreds of applications that we've thought through. Our initial foray is clean water, light for people that don't have it, and cell phones in the developing nations initially. You'll see this on clothing. The kids with backpacks so they can operate their iPods and their little devices, never have to plug them in to recharge, and it will have a huge impact on the battery business, which we think will bring down costs. If you buy this for $20, right, and it's worth 5 years, how many batteries would you have to buy during that period? How many hundreds of dollars of batteries? If you were to use this type of material in lieu of a lantern, running a lantern 4 hours a day costs $60 a year in kerosene. All of a sudden you buy a piece of material that's this size, it costs you $20 and it lasts 5 years. So all of a sudden you're having an impact upon pollution. I mean, you don't think it's a lot, but believe me, it's kids, it's their eyes, it's smelling that stuff, it's all the horrible impacts on their lives and their health. Secondly, the same thing, water purification. Renewable energy and remote sources is going to be the way to get clean water for folks. So I think you're going to see there's a marriage of renewable sources and mobile sources of power, whether it's this, or wind, or other things, that are going to be inexpensive and ways to bridge some of those very significant social challenges that keep people in poverty, right? And have farmers who can sell their products now with cell phones. You know, they have access. Now they can buy a cell phone for $30. These cheap, inexpensive cell phones that will be operated on solar power. And now they can get better prices. Micro businesses in India and Africa, you read the reports, they're exploding. And what's happening? Mobile sources of power are very important to let them develop and bring themselves up. So I do think that there's a marriage between the issue of renewability and giving access to power for all sorts of devices that will then help people come out of poverty. And I think you're going to see a pretty significant marriage between those things. That's my prediction.